The biggest surprise about ambient AI is that the hard part is not the hardware. Microphones, cameras, and chips are already good enough. What blocks scale is social and institutional, figuring out intent, consent, accountability, and trust. By 2026, most multimodal assistants still live in bounded surfaces. Think smartphone helpers, smart speakers, meeting co-pilots, vehicle voice controls, accessibility tools, and early AR prototypes. They can hear, see, and summarize, yet they usually do not act without you approving the action. That design choice is not timid. It is a recognition that interface mistakes are expensive. When an assistant is wrong in a chat box, you roll your eyes. When it is wrong in a car, a clinic, or a finance workflow, you get incidents, liability, and loss of legitimacy. So the dominant pattern is model plus interface plus tool permissions. The model generates suggestions. The interface asks, confirms, and records what happened. Tool permissions define what the assistant is allowed to touch and what it must not. In enterprises, that usually means identity, logging, and policy layers wrap around the assistant. Retrieval boundaries limit what the model can read. Approval chains define what it can execute. The practical point is simple. Ambient AI is not just software. It is governance attached to a sensing and decision surface. A second high-impact finding is that multimodal success depends on grounding, not just eloquence. It is not enough for an assistant to sound plausible. It must tie language to what is actually present in an image, a room, a document set, or a workflow state. One of the durable technical substrates here is vision language grounding. A key milestone was the creation of dense image annotation resources, including work that linked objects, attributes, relationships, and regions to labels. That kind of structure trained systems to connect what you say with what is there, at a much finer level than simple captions. Still, grounding does not equal understanding. A system can label objects in a scene and still be wrong about causality. It can describe what seems visible and still fabricate details that were never observed. In practice, a mature interface has to separate several things clearly: what it saw, what it inferred, what it retrieved from records, what it remembers from earlier, and what it is merely guessing. That leads to an operational requirement leaders should care about: evidence discipline. For visual and ambient claims, you want timestamps, confidence displays, and traceable sources. Otherwise, you get a convincing narrative with no audit trail when it goes wrong. The third finding is that voice and ambient systems are constrained more by ambiguity than by recognition accuracy. People rarely speak like they write. They use pronouns, fragments, and shared context. They change their mind mid-sentence. They also talk over each other or talk while walking, driving, or working. Now add gaze, gesture, location, calendar context, and prior behavior. Those signals can help, but they also create conflicts. Maybe your voice says send that, your gaze is on one document, and your recent work suggests another. The system must preserve intent under multimodal ambiguity. The best near-term strategy is not guess better, it is ask better. A robust assistant exposes uncertainty and asks clarifying questions. It distinguishes observed context from assumed intent. That may feel slower in a demo. It is faster in the real world because it prevents costly corrections. Fourth, and maybe most underestimated, is multi-party consent. Ambient systems do not just serve a user. They capture bystanders, guests, minors, patients, coworkers, and anyone nearby. In a meeting, the assistant might attribute a statement to the wrong person. In a home, it might record someone who never agreed. In a clinic, it might capture sensitive details that have strict retention rules. Adoption, therefore, is tied to legitimacy, not convenience. Social trust research has long shown that institutions succeed when people believe rules are fair, enforcement is credible, and relationships are respected. Always available sensing pushes directly on those fault lines, so the interface must make consent visible and controllable. You want explicit consent modes. You want clear indicators when recording is active. Local processing options matter because they reduce privacy exposure and latency. Retention limits matter because indefinite storage becomes surveillance by default. Bystander opt-out design matters because consent is not only for the person who bought the device. A fifth major finding comes from high-stakes domains like healthcare and education. In these settings, the durable constraint is not capability alone. It is professional accountability, escalation design, safety evidence, and training. In medicine, the most credible near-term role is decision support and documentation support. An ambient assistant can draft notes, summarize encounters, retrieve relevant history, and surface guideline reminders. But unbounded autonomous decision-making is not the default, because the clinician remains accountable. The key design question becomes, when should the system speak, and when should it stay silent? When should it suggest, and when should it escalate? You want logs of recommendations, and you want records of clinician overrides. That is not bureaucracy. It is how you learn safely and how you defend decisions after incidents. A useful way to think about authority in clinical ambient AI is to classify it by what it is allowed to do. Documentation is one level. Summarization and retrieval is another. Alerting and guideline checks raise the stakes. Recommendations require formal decision support governance. Fully autonomous clinical action is a separate category entirely and should demand separate validation if it is ever considered. Education has a parallel governance problem. Learning support, tutoring, and accessibility tools can help students when educators set the rules. But evaluative authority is different. Grading, placement, disciplinary recommendations, and behavioral assessment carry power. Those functions require stronger audit, transparency, and appeal, precisely because they shape life outcomes. Across both domains, the message is consistent. Ambient AI is not a smarter interface. It is a new actor inside regulated workflows. It has to fit the workflow's accountability structure, not bypass it. Now zoom out to enterprise deployment, where many leaders will feel the pressure first. A multimodal assistant can reduce coordination costs. It can summarize meetings, draft follow-ups, search internal knowledge, and move work across tools. Yet it can also create shadow decisions, actions taken without clear authorization, or summaries that quietly become the record. That is why treating deployment as a software license purchase is a category error. The cost center is operational redesign. You need identity binding, role-based permissions, event logs, and evaluation pipelines. You also need rollback procedures, because the fastest way to lose trust is to be unable to undo a bad automation. New roles emerge as well. Someone has to design conversations and clarification flows. Someone has to lead multimodal evaluation, not just model selection. Someone must investigate incidents like misattribution, unsafe recommendations, or privacy leaks. Accessibility specialists matter, because a general assistant is not automatically accessible. Data retention engineering matters because memory is power. A critical architectural distinction helps here, separating transient perception from durable memory. Transient perception is short-lived sensor processing, used to answer immediate commands. Durable memory is what gets stored: preferences, transcripts, visual logs, action histories, institutional records. Those two categories deserve different consent, retention, access, and deletion rules. Cybersecurity also changes shape at the interface layer. Voice-only authorization is seductive and often unsafe. For high-authority actions, you want stronger authentication, like speaker verification or equivalent controls. Synthetic voices, replay attacks, and impersonation become real operational risks. The interface is a new attack surface because it is the doorway between intent and execution. Looking forward across time, near-term deployment from 2026 to 2050 will normalize multimodal assistance across workplaces, homes, vehicles, classrooms, and clinics. But many consequential actions will remain confirmation-bound and audited. In the mid-horizon from 2050 to 2100, the ambition is policy-governed ambient environments, buildings and factories with persistent identity, consent, contextual memory, and local processing. Longer horizons push toward environments that coordinate cognition itself. But the hard limits remain. There is no reliable mind reading and no shortcut around governance. So what should a strategy or capital allocation leader do now? Fund pilots, yes, but only when paired with evaluation infrastructure. Budget for red team testing, accessibility testing, privacy review, data retention engineering, incident response, and user training. Put authority boundaries into vendor contracts in plain language. What may be recommended, drafted, executed, escalated, or refused. Require exportable logs, including tool calls, retrieved documents, confirmations, and executed actions. Most of all, remember the core principle. Ambient AI succeeds when it reliably translates intent into authorized action without stealing consent or eroding trust.